Hi everyone. Welcome again. Uh, we're almost there. We're almost there. 29 subscribers. If this is the first time you're watching my video, I just want to say welcome. My name is Ryan. So this is another video on this channel that I tagged behind closed doors. Because there's so much that goes on behind us that we're unaware of. If this is your first time, I want to say welcome. You're not here by mistake. You're here because this is, I don't believe in coincidence. You're here because this is where you need to be at this point in time. So welcome. Don't just stop at watching. I would crave your indulgence, to watch to the end. And when you do, please subscribe. Turn on the notification button so that, when I post something new, you get it. And please like and share. For 29 subscribers I have, thank you so much. Thank you for being a part of this. Like I said, the whole picture is to create a platform where I can stream live, and people can just come in and share their experiences with no judgment at all, because we're all here to learn and to grow. And if it means me having to tell my own story, then so be it. Yeah, so what happens when you're telling when you're recounting something, the more you recount, the more things you remember. So I did say the night before the wedding, her younger sister called me, and yeah, I couldn't quite remember the term she used. It wasn't pathological. Like it was. She said she asked me. She said, "Are you sure you know my sister?" Um, and I said yes. And she said, "Are you sure?" And I said yes. And she said, "I don't think you do, because she's an artful dodger." So that was how she described her own sister. But I've come to realize that at the end of the day, people just come and go. And what will be judged at the end of the day is the impact we had on the lives we encountered. And I pray that my sharing my life story with you, it helps you, whatever storm you're going through, whatever circumstances you're facing. This is one person saying, "I believe in you. I believe you can go through it. You just need to trust God." You know. Um. Yeah. So yeah, I talked about. I think I spoke last about getting my daughter in school and all that, and yeah, I was able to get her a job. And prior to getting married, I had drawn up a list of things I would want to do. I wanted to be the first person to buy my wife. I didn't even know who my wife was going to be then. So I was going to buy her a car on her birthday. I was going to take her on her first trip abroad. I had first. I didn't know who the person was, but I already knew what I was going to do. And like I said, in the very first year, I had made a mistake. Um, but then having that idea that if you create the right environment and you put people, you empower them to make the right choices, it doesn't work that way. It has to boil down to the individual, who's willing to change or not, And so progressively, it is just deteriorated, and for many of you who've never heard of juju or voodoo, every time she was around, there was just an unease in my spirit, and it was a very very trying period. Um, but then again, I got her first job, and then after the incident where I went to see her at the office, and I saw what she was doing. I told her again. I said, this at this rate, I don't know if you're going to continue working there. And so what happened? What happened then was that I think the company underwent new owners, and so they changed the name, and they closed down the call center she was at. And so she came again and said, "You've done it. You said it, and all that." And I recall, they gave her two CDs, to pick. I don't want to go into the many times I found her doing weird stuff. Okay, I'll share one. Like I said, she was always opting for the night shift, and so I wouldn't see ourselves, So we're basically communicating via email. And I remember one of the night shifts she came back. For some reason, I think I needed to go report at a different location, so I hadn't left the house. I dropped my daughter, but I didn't leave the house. And so she walks in, and then she takes out her bra from her bag, and I'm like, "What the?" I said, "Why is your bra in your bag?" And she comes up with a story of, it was that it was too tight, so she took it off in the office, and I'm like, okay, that was one instance. And then it progressed to, so prior to them shutting down the call center, she came up and she told me, they had this training that she had been selected to go for a training. Mind you, I had worked in the corporate sector for so many years, so you don't take a new mom. As I said, what are you talking about? Why would they choose you? You still have an infant, And she said, no, this is another opportunity for her to really, get promoted, and that she would have the opportunity of meeting the new owners of the company. I mean, it didn't really make sense to me, but like I said, you don't go into marriage hoping to catch the person lying, But the truth is, the Bible says that the heart of man is deceitful, not just deceitful, but desperately wicked. And it says, who can know it? And it reminds me of a quote that says, "There's no art yet known to man, by which the mind's construction can be read from the face." So you never can tell what people are thinking about unless they share it. And even when they share it, except the person is, the person is truthful, you still have to, take it with a grain of salt. I mean, the Bible says test every spirit. So, so she came up with this training, and I was going to be in a different city. And I said, why would they pick you? I mean, you're a new mom. And she said, oh no, this is it's another opportunity for her to get promoted. And I'm talking about this was her second year. Yeah, it was the second year working there. Mind you, like a man, I'd never asked how much she was earning. I was still doing all I needed to do, paying the bills and doing all that. Just several instances, but I wouldn't want to bore you. It was just, it was really despicable. Anyway, fast forward to the trainings, and so I said, so what does it entail? She said, no, it's a different city, and she'll have to fly out. And I can remember one time I told her I needed to travel, and I asked her if she could stay, because she'll leave on a Thursday. She said the trainings were usually commenced on Friday and would run through Sunday, and so she would return on Monday. So she'll leave on Thursday. Mind you, I was paying for the flights, and I remember this instance where I had just bought the car of my dreams then, and I needed to go pick it up. And I pleaded with her, just stay one night. I'm going to fly you out anyway, so I'll fly you out Friday morning. and she refused. She said, she has to be there on Thursday, and so my babysitter had to spend the night with my daughter while I went and I got the vehicle. But then one thing about me is, they say this thing, what you don't know won't kill you. Sometimes I wonder where these cliches come from, because for me, what I don't know will kill me. I need to know what's happening. That's who I am. Um, and then today someone put it, very well. It said, when you when you um, when you justify the little things, then you will tolerate the larger things. So I noticed that, she was going for these trainings, every fortnight, and the only time she wouldn't go was when she was having her monthly period. And before she would go for these trainings, she would do complete makeover, do her hair, shave her downstairs. And I recall asking her, I said, why are you shaving? I'm not complaining. And her response was funny. She said, it helps her, so that when she's having a period, it doesn't mess up her hair or something stupid. And I was wondering, why do you have to do a complete makeover? She would make her hair, do her fingernails, manicure, pedicure, the whole works, and then she'll come back. She would come back on Monday, 4 days, and I just said, okay, well, it's one of these things. But then there were some things I would do. Back in high school, my friends used to call me James Bond, just the way I used to think. Um, and one of the cities she used to go to for these trainings, I used to go there too. So I had someone who I would call to come pick me up at the airport. And so I told her, I said, okay, one of the trainings, I said, okay, when you get there, I'm gonna call this guy to come pick you up. And she said, okay. And so she lands, and then the driver calls me and says, where's your wife? So I start calling her, and she picks and she says, she's arrived and she's looking for the person. I said, but you have his number, call him. And at the end of the day, she didn't go with him. She said when she called him, he wasn't picking or something, which was just a lie. And then another thing I noticed was that anytime she came back from these trainings, she would come back with, when you stay in hotels, someone who's traveled, like me, when you stay in hotels, you have the small canisters of lotion and shampoo and conditioners and all that. Anytime she went for this training, she would come back with, like bottles of this stuff, and I'm like, but your company has a guest house. And she says, no, they put them in hotels and all that. It was a lot to deal with, really. It was a lot to deal with. And back then, we used to have our family prayers. I think it was 9 p.m. And I would call her. Every time I called her, she would never pick her phone. Mind you, this is someone who you could barely separate from her phone. And so I just gave up calling her, and so myself and my daughter would just pray and go to sleep. And then one time she called like 4 hours later, like it was like 1 a.m. And she said, oh, sorry, she left her phone in her room, which wasn't true, She left her phone in her room and she was downstairs getting a meal, just something weird. I mean, I've stayed in hotels in how many countries? And so it continued. And what she would do was she would send me an email from her work account, where she had been designated as one of the people to go for these trainings. I mean, when I told her, she told me the person I actually spoke to She's late now. She went to the same high school as I did. She said, call the lady. She's the one who's actually pushing me for this position. Like I said, she's the kind of person that, when she said anything, you would need to, you not just a pinch of salt, but you need to put in garlic and cinnamon and some cilantro, in order to be able to take it. And so she would send me these emails, where she was designated to go for these trainings. Um, and I recall that something just told me, do a retrace the email, because I knew who her supervisors were. I spoke with them, and she would send me an email with the thread. The thread would show her supervisors talking to her and all that. And so I sent the same email to one of our supervisors, and the lady called me and said, "I'm sorry, what is this email about?" I said, "Didn't you send it?" She said, "No, she's never seen it." And so basically, what she was doing was, she would take these emails, doctor them, and send to me. She never knew I would do a back check. And so that's how I knew that she wasn't going for the trainings. So I spoke with the supervisor, and the supervisor said, "No, the company doesn't train, customer care. The company doesn't even train supervisors. That what they do is they send people and they train them, and then the people who are trained, it's like train the trainer kind of thing, but that not people at her level." Like I said, it was every fortnight, And so it just continued, It just continued, She would go, come back, go, come back, go, come back. And so that's, till today, I tell people, I've been a single parent for as long as I've had kids. But I'm grateful. Because my daughter and I were so close that right now she can tell me. She tells me literally anything. And she's one reason that I choose to be thankful every day. No matter how bad I feel or how bad the day is. Whenever she calls or I think about her, I'm thankful. Because from the messiness, God was able to bring something beautiful out of it. And then in 2009, she started losing weight, and I said, "What's wrong?" She said she had anemia, and I'm like, "Okay, go get yourself checked out and all that." She was losing weight, and I was like, what's wrong? I actually spoke with my GP, and to show how devious she was, my GP, who I was paying, she had gotten him a girlfriend. So now his alliance was towards her. And I recall talking with this doctor, and I said, what's going on? Why is she having these STDs? And he said, women, maybe it's the restroom they have at the company. I said, no, I've been to the company. It's high standard. They don't have it. We're living in a 3-bedroom apartment then. I said, we live in a 3-bedroom apartment, two bathrooms. I said, just 3 of us, so where's she picking these STDs from? And the man kind of tried to explain it. He didn't want to come out and say, it was intercourse and all that, But I kind of knew, And so when I found out about this, so I was really overwhelmed at this point, It was like I was going under, because I'm a private person, This is the first time I'm really coming out and saying all this. But I recall that there was this lady in church who picked up, and what happened was I had invited the couple for dinner. And so while we were at dinner, it was a Chinese restaurant. While we were at dinner, the lady asked my ex, I didn't see you at the program. They had a women's program that weekend. She said, I didn't see you at the program. And my ex had told me she went for the she went for the program, and immediately I caught it, but I pretended. And the lady, you know, women do this thing, this sisterhood thing, which is annoying. So she stopped, and then my ex said, "No, I was there. You served communion," and the lady actually served communion. But the lady, after a while, when she found out what was going on, she told me that she didn't see her in church. She wasn't in church. But that's how skillful she was, and that's why when I tell people that there's more to life than meets the eye. For people who don't believe that there's a spiritual dimension, one of my favorite quotes is that we're not just human beings having a spiritual experience. We're actually spiritual beings who are having a human experience. So you need to factor in the spiritual. And that's why being a Christian is one of the best things. It's something that's kept me alive till today. Oh yeah, regarding rent, I got a call from property manager, still not paid. Still trusting God. So so they started filing eviction, whatever. So I told her, I said on Monday I'll try to make some payments. So I've reached out. Well, that's just an update on that situation. And if you want to reach out to me, you can always send me an email or something. Oh yeah. So things are gotten so bad that we're not speaking at all. And this lady came around and she said, what's going on? What's going on? And I told her, I said, this lady she's being unfaithful. That's even if she knew what that word meant. That she's being unfaithful and she just lies. I said it was the lies that are getting to me, So she said, what do you mean? I said, okay, for instance, I said, watch. So this was a weekend, and usually my daughter would have her hair done on weekends, so I told her, I said, okay, just watch. I said, she's going to come out and she's going to ask me for permission to take my daughter. So when I say ask for permission, don't think it's the controlling thing. No, it's just it's something. It's accountability. I told her, I said, she's going to come out and say she wants to take my daughter to fix her hair. Because the lady said, no, this is you're saying, I can't believe it. It's not true. I think you're just overthinking. So she came out and my ex came out and said, can I take my daughter to do her hair? I said, yeah, she can. So she took my daughter, she went away. So I waited 10 minutes after I told the lady, come, let me show you. So she got into the car and we drove to where my daughter was supposed to be making her hair. And her car wasn't there. My daughter was out there playing on the street. And that was when this lady actually realized that all I had been saying was true. And I told her, I said, but wait, let me make you understand how bad it is. So I placed a call to my ex. And I said, how is the hair going? She said, oh, it's going fine. It's going fine. And there's just one person before my daughter. And it was true. There was one person before my daughter. But the fact was, she wasn't there. And it was on speaker, and this lady was looking at me with her mouth. Her jaw had dropped to the floor mat. Because this was somebody saying that she's there, meanwhile she wasn't there. So when I had my cars, I installed trackers. And even while at work, I'll be looking at, because I recall speaking. I think my cousin had gone through an experience, and his in-law, his father-in-law had said, stop, my daughter cannot do this, you need to show me proof. And so what I started doing then was I would it's crazy now. I'll pull up the GPS, and someone who had left and said she was going to work, her car would still be in the same city. Now I remember one night there was this instance where her younger sister had come to see her and she had left. And then I looked at the I checked for her location, and it was at a hotel. And so I called this lady and I said, she's at the hotel, let's hurry up and see if we can get her. By the time we got there, she had already gone. And so I asked her, I said, what were you doing at this place? She was like, no, I went to work and all that, And there was an instance I was driving. There was an instance I was, driving around, and I saw her car. She had told me she was going to work. She worked in another city, and I saw her car with, a tailor, and the tailor was it was really bad. It was really bad. But like I said, behind closed doors, what happens. And so, this just continued, it just continued, because every time I caught her in a lie, I tell her, I said, I'm telling you how I caught you in a lie for one of two reasons, and it's for you to pick. One is either that you stop lying and work on telling the truth, or work harder at telling lies that would pass the sniff test. She always went for the latter. And so in 2009, she was losing weight and all that. In December, this was not too long after my sister had gotten married. And again, there was drama there, So a man calling her on the phone, and I said, why? Everyone is working, this is a wedding. Why are you spending so much time on the phone? And she says, no, she's helping a rookie, go through her chores or something. And I spoke to her mother about it, and she said, I'll talk to her. The summary of the whole thing was, it was a guy calling her, Oh, honestly, I don't know how I survived it. I think it was just God, because I think our goal was, for me to go to meet my maker, but it just wasn't my time. And it gives credence to this. God's word is true. It says, He resides in the heavens and He presides over the affairs of men. Matthew 6:33 says, seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and everything. And that's all I've been trying to do. Not perfect, just trying to do what I know God expected of me. And so, December 2009, I knew something was wrong with her, but I didn't know. And so I hired a PI, to be I had a PI to be following her around, and it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all. It just wasn't good. That's all I can say. And so 2009, she had this thing, and I'm like, what's wrong with you? She's like, she doesn't know. And so this was after they had so when they closed her call center, they gave them the option, 2 cities. I said, go to city A, because city B, that's where you meet all your male friends. And she told me, see, in city B, housing is expensive. So she eventually went to city A, where, which was her stomping ground. And so she used to visit maybe like once every 2 weeks. And the funny thing, I'm very observant. the funny thing was she would always come in like 1 a.m., you know. And I told her, I said, you are disturbing everybody. You're disturbing the gate man. You're disturbing me. And when I would go to open the door, she would come in. I mean, for someone who's traveled, you know, I mean, even if you've flown first class, you know, except you took a shower or something, you know, you look tired, and you know, she, every time she came in, you know, those times, look, you know, she smelled like someone who had just come out from the shower. Well, one of those things I just filed away, you know. And then the lady told me, you better be serious. You better start taking out your important stuff, because you don't know what this lady's up to. So, you know, continued, you know, still doing the husbandly thing. We're still intimate, even though it was more of what I'm supposed to do, not because I want to, but because, you know, so that nobody will say I'm withholding it from her. But then I noticed that during this period, she started doing things that were, you know, kind of strange. Like when I want to use the prophylactic, she would say, no. I'm like, why? You know, since when? Say, no, it doesn't feel the same and all that. You know, I don't want to go into it, into all those things. So May 2010, I was trying to sleep, and she lay down and she was sobbing, and she was disturbing me. You know, I needed to sleep because I was going to work the next day. And so I said, please, what is it? She says, you know, with you know, that Oscar nomination performance, really. Is it Oscar or Grammy? Oscar. Grammy is for singers, for acting. And she was like, you know, with tearful voice, I went to the hospital today and I told them to run all the tests. Every test, because I don't know what's wrong with me. I told them to run all the tests, including HIV. I'm like, okay. Yeah, and the test results came back, and it shows that I'm HIV positive. I flew off the bed because I had nobody in his mind, not even me that has a very vivid imagination, never ever thought about HIV, you know. This was 2010. So she contracted it in December 2009. She told me 6 months after. And, you know, the grand scheme was to get me infected, because I recall, you know, my GP calling me one of the days I went to work, and he called me and he said, you know, can I come over to the hospital? And I said, yeah, what's happening? He said, oh no, he's treating her for an infection, and he wants to know if I also need to be put on meds. And one of the things I had established, or we had spoken about, was, you know, not going to the doctor on your own. You know, I mean, what are you hiding? If I'm going, you go with me, so you know what's happening. But he had already flipped. She would go on her own and all that. But, you know. And so the doctor called me this day and said, you know, can I come to the office? Can I come see him? And I'm like, yeah, what was it? He was like, no, you come. I'm treating him for something. I want to know if I need to treat you too. So I take the drive, go to the hospital, private hospital. And for the first time since I knew the guy, he didn't send me to the phlebotomist. He drew my blood himself in his office. Told me to go to his restroom, which was in his office too. You know, to give him urine sample. Drew my blood himself. And then, you know, I was asking what's going on. They was like, no, he will let me know. And so he called me and said, no, I'm fine. I didn't even know what was going on. You know, he said, no, I'm fine. And so apparently he told her, because she had told him that, you know, she contracted it from me, So he told her, no, you can't, it's not your husband. Your husband is not, he doesn't have HIV. In her words, that his immune system is very strong. And I didn't even know what was going on. People, I didn't. And so she tells me this thing, May 2010. And so I jump off the bed. And I jumped off the bed not because of proximity, but because I needed to pray, And I told her, I said, get off the bed, come, let's pray. And I remember, and I prayed and I asked God, I said, this lady's not a Christian, heal, because I already assumed I had gotten it. I'd gotten infected 6 months. I said, heal her because of me, heal us, It was traumatizing, really. It was traumatizing. And then my brother, who's a medical doctor, I had called him and I asked him, because I had done every research on HIV. I mean, her CD4 count then was 85. That's how low it was. She already had lymph node infections. She had all over. She had one on her neck that had swollen, and it was just bad, And then she had pneumonia. No, sorry, she had TB. She had TB then, and so I called my older brother, and I was just asking him. I said, where can I get antiretroviral drugs? So he started laughing at me. He said, what you want to get to pharmacy? You want to still go into pharmacy? So I had to tell him. I said, no, it's because of her. And he said, am I sure? I said, yes. I said, if you were you, what would you do? He said he would want to make sure that she's actually fooling around. And I think that's where I got the PR and all that. I already knew she was, but I needed, like tangible proof. Photographs, conversations she would have in the vehicle, at the box, the trackers would pick up and all that. I mean, it was really traumatizing. Imagine coming back at the end of the day, you're trying to sleep and then she comes in and all that, Anyway, so my brother comes to visit and he talks with her, being a doctor. And of course, I knew everything. I had researched everything on HIV and AIDS. And so what she had done was the GP knew. The GP was the one who tested her. But he wasn't a HIV designated center. So what he was doing was he was getting the antiretroviral drugs from a teaching hospital and dispensing it to her. Because one of the things that also stood out, the red flag to me, was when I received the medical bill. It was way high, and I'm like, what's going on? It was because of the cost of the drugs she was taking. But because it wasn't HIV certified, he was just giving her, anyhow, not the right dosage. And so I moved her from there to a proper facility that could deal with HIV. Now this was me thinking, I already had it and all that. And I remember, the lymph node infection she had on her neck, it was really big. So I took her to go see a surgeon. And I remember going in and telling him, both of us have it, because I thought I had it, And I was saying it because I didn't want the stigma, I told him, I said, both of us have it, So he said, okay, he would take her, he would deal with the lymph node thingy. I remember that while we were there waiting for her to be called, she was sitting, like 2 rows ahead of me. I mean, she was so adroit at what she was doing that she could send a text without even looking. She knew. I don't know how she didn't develop trigger finger. She would look up and she'll be sending text messages. That's how bad it was. And I was waiting. In my mind, I said, okay, when they take you in for the theater, will you go with your phone? So of course she didn't go with her phone. So when they wheeled her in, I took her phone. It was passworded, and I took out her SIM. I took out her memory card, and I went and see if I could get, because I knew there was stuff on it, but she had locked it, and so I couldn't get into it. Like I said, the thing God doesn't want you to see, you can never say it. And so she had the surgery, came out, was successful, and then my brother said, if, asked if my parents were aware. I said no, and he said, like I said, I wasn't really close to my mom. We really didn't have the best of relationships. And he said, you better call. He was her favorite. He said, you better call mommy, because what she knows is everything this lady has been telling her, which was sad, because it hurt me to know that, to find out that my mom picked someone else over her own child, just to spite her husband, which is something I say, when a couple, if you have issues, don't bring in the kids. And she'd call my mom and tell my mom stuff like, that I was carrying women, and my mom would say don't mind her. And then I had gone into real estate, and she would tell my mom things like, she took a loan, and my mom would tell her, make sure both your names on the deed, just silly stuff, all in a bid to hurt her husband, hurt my dad. You're now doing all this. And so my brother said, you better tell mommy, because she doesn't know. And so I had to tell them. And it was my dad who told me, go do the test. And I told him there's no point doing the test. I mean, I already have it. And he said, no, just do it, so we know what we're doing, what we're going to do going forward. I said, okay, but there's no point. He said, just go do it. So I went to my GP, and I said, okay, I want to do the HIV screening test. And I'll never forget what I was driving through a vegetable market when my phone rang. And I was so nervous that I had to pack. And so he called and said, hi, this is Dr. whatever, this Mr. CC-Okeke. I said, yes. He said, okay, the test results have come back, and you are negative. I lost it. I lost it. First person I called was my dad. And he said, okay, good. So I also did the test for my daughter. She was also negative. And at that point in time, I couldn't explain it, because I'm science-based. How could I have been with a lady for 6 months, intimacy and all that, and I didn't contract it? And even if I wasn't a Christian then, I would have been one, because that's something that is inexplicable. How do you explain it? Well, with the thing with HIV, you do the test, and then you have to do 30 days, and then you have to do 60 days, and then you have to do 90 days. And I remember that period was really harrowing, because every time something was happening to me, if I went to use the restroom, they would whisper in my ears, oh, it's finally shown up, So I was there, waiting for the thing to manifest, But it never did. So thankfully, my daughter and I, HIV negative. And then the church got involved. I think I need to stop. The church got involved, and there was this person she was always talking with. She would spend hours on the phone, and I said, "Who is that?" She said, "He's a physician. He's a pharmacist." He's telling her about what are the inroads with HIV and all that, himself and the wife and all that. Just silly stuff. Anyway, when the church sent people to my house, including her uncle, it was kind of like an elders meeting. Uncle came, and they asked me, they said, what is it? What is she doing that's really upsetting you? And I didn't even have I was still considerate of her. I was thinking, if I tell them she has HIV, the stigma and all that. So I couldn't bring myself to say she has HIV. So what I said was, she has an STD. Ask her where she got it from. And so they asked her, they said, is it true? And she looked at me and she said, and she called my name. And she said, I got it from you. And I think that's one of the few times in my life that I've been surprised. And because of her antecedents, I started doubting it. Actually started calling doctors. I was asking doctors. I called my brother. I said, is it possible for me to be a carrier and not have the symptoms? He said it's not possible. I asked somebody else. Said it's not possible. So that was when I knew it was tough. And during the meeting, they had told her, because I mentioned the guy's name. I said, she was talking to this person. I don't know who the person is. So they told her, call the person and put your phone on speaker. So she called the person, and she's the kind of person that when you back her in a corner, she'll preempt the person so the other person knows what to say. And they told her, just call the person and be quiet. And so she called the person and said, and they told her, please, can you be quiet? But the thing it was laughable, because the guy was now angry with her. Why are you calling me? Am I the one that is wrecking your marriage and all that? And they said, see what you're doing to yourself and all that. And it was at this point that the pastor had said they should ask me if I had a death wish, because we're still staying together. But what the truth is, I was waiting for my daughter to get out of school so that I could move. And so that's how we parted ways in 2010. But it doesn't end there. Well, in all of this, I'm not saying this to brag about me. I'm just sharing my story. The things I've been through, and I know I wouldn't be here, if it were not for God's mercy and grace. And so even though, it's still tough, it's still rough, with dystonia and all that, my faith is all I've got. That's all I can cling to. So I'll continue this, and again, please like the video, subscribe if you haven't, and share. Let's get to 50. Okay, let's get to 50. We just need 21 more people. Let's get to 50. Well, thank you for listening to this. I'm talking about. I'm trying to cram 4 years. Yeah, 4 years of living with her into this. So I believe I should be able to finish it up with the next video. Hopefully, I can. So thank you for listening. Thank you for watching, and I hope it helps you. Don't go snooping. I mean, if you think your partner is doing something that's wrong, talk with him or her. And if deep down, you are not convinced, then just pull the plug. Forget about what people will say. Pull the plug, because at the end of the day, it's your life. Your life is at risk. We live in a world where spouses do crazy things. Crazy things. So if you're going through that, it's best you part ways. And co-parent if you can. And if you can't co-parent, take hold of your child and raise your child the way God wants. Raise up your child the right way. Because when your child grows up, she's not going to depart from that. Because my daughter is who she is because of all that, And I'm not taking any accolades for what she's done. My daughter has worked her butt off to be where she is, So this is a guy who's still living today, despite HIV, tuberculosis. What is it? So I'm gonna end here because I need to go lay down. But like I always say, the fact that you are still watching this, lets me know that God is not yet done with you. Okay, so you just need to keep your chin up. Okay, keep the faith. Okay, the future will be better. Just hold on to hope. Okay, I'll see you next time. Bye.